Welcome all to Populist Politics, Episode 8. I am your host, Bobby Funk. I'm so happy that you got a chance to join us tonight. We're going to shift gears here. We've been talking mainly on this podcast about the Iran war and national politics. But tonight we're going to shift gears to Illinois politics. I'm an Illinois resident and a Chicago resident. So we're going to talk a lot about those politics and their dynamics. We're mainly going to talk about the governor's race in Illinois as JB Pritzker vies for his third term in office. One of the most important things you should note about Illinois politics is we don't have any term limits for our governor. So our governor, if the people decide that our governor is for them, then the governor can serve for life. So this is unlike any other state. I believe there's 10 or 13 states that don't have any term limits for their governor, and Illinois happens to be one of those states. So odds are I get to live in a state where the governor can rule kind of like a kingship. But our governor, JB Pritzker, supposedly or proponently hates kings. He advertises the No Kings protest, but he surely wants to be the king of Illinois because he wants to run forever and ever and ever, it appears, unless he's able to convince the national Democrats that he is their guy for 2028, which we think he is going to run for president in 2028 and try to succeed Joe Biden and kick Kamala Harris to the curb. He's already been kind of campaigning for that role as he draws much of his attention as governor to criticizing Donald Trump and his immigration policies. And he's drawing out this Project 2029 in which he is vowing that the Democrats in 2029 are going to go after their political opponents and jail Trump administration members for supposed crimes that this administration has partaken in. They think that the Trump administration going after illegal immigrants is a major crime, and they are going to go after the Republican Party on the national level, when he is supposed to be advocating for Illinoisans. But his attentions lie elsewhere to the federal government and prosecuting Republicans in the Trump administration instead of dealing with our problems in Illinois. And we have a lot of problems here. We are the highest property tax state in the nation. You have upwards to $10,000 average property, upwards past $10,000 in income that is drawn out from those properties to the Illinois government. But here's the kick. They don't do anything with those. Our public amenities are subpar. They keep raising the budgets, and Illinoisans and Chicagoans are not feeling like we are getting accounted for by this government. They just seem to want to spend on not Illinoisans or Chicagoans, but illegal immigrants. They want to give them whatever they want, and Illinoisans and Chicagoans be damned. So with all that being said, we have a governor's race in 2026. You have the nominee for the Democratic side, like I've been referring to, is JB Pritzker, our current governor. And then you have Darren Bailey on the Republican side. Now, Darren Bailey ran against Pritzker in 2022, and he lost by a considerable fashion. He lost, I believe JB Pritzker got about 55% of the vote here in Illinois. So that made Bailey had 44. I'm not going to do the math, but something like that. And it mainly, Darren Bailey got most of the votes in rural Illinois, the bottom of the state. But when it came to the counties that matter, that have the most population, DuPage, not in this order, DuPage is the second most populous county in Illinois. The first is Cook County, which encompasses all of Chicagoland and the major city of Chicago. So you have Cook County, what has the #1 population in the state. DuPage second, Lake is third. And all of those counties were won considerably by JB Pritzker in 2022. So all through the Republican primaries, the whole idea was what candidate could win Cook County, could persuade the 40% independent voters in our states to side with the Republicans instead of the Democrats. Because in the general election, that is going to be the key for Republicans. We need to win independents and possibly sway Democrat voters in Cook County. That's a tall task, especially when it comes to Democratic voters in the city. But independent voters who are already on the fringes, maybe they're upset with the current Democratic Party in Illinois that wants to tax our citizens up the wazoo. They want to impose gas taxes, mileage taxes on your cars. They keep upping the tolls in our states through, as you go closer to the city, and especially in the western suburbs. That is where they get you. If you're going on I-80, or if you're going on 355 or I-57, that is where they get you with tolls. Mainly 355 is the most tolls that I see when I'm driving. But those are going up. They keep raising them. The parking meters in Chicago are being offshored to companies in China. Even when the city of Chicago tries to get revenue to support our public services, it's going to China. That's what our state is. They are a corruption machine, especially Chicago. Illinois is known for corruption. So you have these two candidates. Darren Bailey, who was able to get all the southern electorate in 2022, but failed to get this Cook County, this vital, where most of the population in Illinois lives. So when the Republican primary came, you had 4 candidates. You had Darren Bailey, Ted Dabrowski, who was an Ecuadorian and Polish descendant who lived in Cook County. He worked for Wire Points in Illinois policy. These two free market organizations that try and get Chicago to be more free economically and make citizens' lives better. So he was a very viable candidate for Cook County. And when it came to the primary, Ted Dabrowski came in second, The others didn't even get 20%. So they're not even worth talking about here. So you have Ted Dabrowski, who won in the Republican primary. He won 48% of Cook County. And then you have Darren Bailey, who once again in the primaries got most of the southern region. But where do Republicans live in this state? They don't live in Cook County. They don't live in the suburbs. Independent voters may live there, and they may have transferred their registration to Republican to vote for Ted Dabrowski. So the majority of the Republicans do not live in Cook County. So that is how Ted Dabrowski lost. He wasn't able to get those rural counties to vote for him. They wanted Bailey to have a second crack at JB Pritzker. So that's what's going on. Darren Bailey has a second crack at Pritzker to try to oust him as the Illinois governor. So Darren Bailey is our guy. But is he able to sway any independent voters in Cook County is the big question coming into November in the general election in Illinois. He is changing his strategy from 2022. He is planning on doing less talking and more listening to Cook County residents and the broader Illinois residents. He posted on X 2 days after he won the nomination on St. Patrick's Day with a picture of him headed into the city on I-80. He said, less talking, more listening. That means that he's trying to listen to Cook County, the suburbs, and the city folks in this general election. He admits that he hasn't had success in the suburbs and Chicago in his last campaign. So we love the self-evaluation. He understands that what he needs to do differently here is to appeal to Cook County voters. Now, how is he going to do this? He is focusing on showing people how destructive JB Pritzker's policies are to two important topics when it comes to politics today. The two most important politic topics for most people are crime and affordability. So what he's doing about crime is he's highlighting the destructive Safety Act and the Trust Act that Pritzker has signed into law. If you don't know much about Illinois politics, the Safety Act is our criminal justice reform where we abolish cash bail and criminals have this post-trial hearing in front of a judge, and the judge gets to decide himself whether this person is a threat to the public. If they are not a threat to the public, they get released. If they are a threat to the public, then they stay in prison. So these judges get this sole discretion to decide whether this individual gets free or he has to stay in jail. So this has caused havoc. The most famous case was about 4 months ago, I think. The lady that was burned on, I believe it was the Blue Line in Chicago. A lady was literally burned. She was in critical condition in the hospital from being burned alive on the Blue Line. And this particular criminal was arrested 70 times before this incident, and all of them, he was released. So you're telling me this guy gets arrested 70 times, and all of the judges say that this guy is not a threat to society. How do you get arrested 70 times and not be a threat to society? You are a lawless individual if you get arrested 70 times. 70! So these judges are not implying the right discretion to these cases. They're probably looking at each one individually. They are not looking at the person and how many times this guy has been arrested, and they are making the wrong decision in releasing these individuals, these criminals, into our society. And then you have the Trust Act. So the Trust Act is JB Pritzker's, once again, his defiant of Donald Trump. The Trust Act is that state police, Chicago police, they are not going to work with the federal government to arrest illegal immigrants and help them deport them. That is the Trust Act. And these two acts are absolutely detrimental to Illinois and Chicago. So Darren Bailey is highlighting these two, and he's also getting a lot of political momentum from this Loyola student, Sheridan Gorman, who was killed on March 19th in, what was that neighborhood? In Rogers Park. She was murdered in Rogers Park by a Venezuelan illegal immigrant, and he was arrested previously. He actually asked to be deported back to Colombia, and authorities did nothing about it. They just sent him back on the bus, back to Chicago, back to kill Sheridan Gorman. So Darren Bailey has been highlighting that this particular illegal immigrant who killed an 18-year-old college student at Loyola would not have been in the country were it not for JB Pritzker's Trust Act defying Donald Trump. And he's posed JB Pritzker as caring way too much about Donald Trump and national politics and not on Illinoisans and their problems. Because once again, like I'm outlining, we have a lot of problems in our state. So that is Darren Bailey's goal right now. He's also running a campaign on obviously lowering those property taxes, those gas taxes. He's also running on affordability. We have so much taxes. We have sales tax is one of the most highest in the country as well. And we're just getting killed by these JB Pritzker policies. But the question is he able to win this race? Because much of Illinois politics runs through Cook County, and he has not demonstrated an ability to do that. But it's off to a pretty good start. People in Illinois are fed up with JB Pritzker's policies. I would hope. But my worry is because Bailey is well connected to the Trump administration, that is going to be the pillar that sets him off course. He's Trump endorsed. So many liberals in Chicago that are not informed, they are going to say, well, this guy's a Trumpy, and I don't agree with Trump. I don't agree with ICE. And now I'm just going to vote against Darren Bailey. And they forget all about how these taxes are burdening our state and how destructive JB Pritzker is and how he wants to be president more than he wants to affect change in Illinois. He doesn't care about us. That's the main point. JB Pritzker does not care about Illinoisans. All he cares about is defying Trump, winning the 2028 Democratic nomination. And I just hope that Darren Bailey is able to capitalize on this political momentum from Sheridan's death and people's frustration with the tax burden and the affordability crisis that is happening in Illinois.